Sheldon James Plankton, or simply Plankton, is the one villain we all know from SpongeBob SquarePants. He's a mastermind genius who envies the success of his longtime rival and former friend, Mr. Krabs. He constantly tries to steal the secret Krabby Patty formula, but no matter how smart he is, he always fails. He's clearly a genius, creating all kinds of inventions and using clever tactics and strategies. Yet he never gets what he wants. He always fails to get the Krabby Patty formula. Why? Is it just because he's tiny? Or is there a deeper reason behind all of this? Before we dive into that, let's talk about his origin story and where his obsession with stealing the Krabby Patty recipe and destroying Mr. Krabs' restaurant really came from. In the episode Friend or Foe, we learn that Plankton and Mr. Krabs used to be friends. They were born on the same day and had been friends since the moment they existed. They did everything together, even getting bullied together. Eventually, they decided to try making money by selling burgers, hoping people would finally see them differently. But before long, they had a disagreement. Both of them believed they could improve the recipe in their own way. They fought, and the recipe was torn in half. Plankton got one piece and tried over and over to make patties with it, but he always failed and couldn't really sell his food. Meanwhile, Krabs accidentally discovered a brand new recipe, and that led him to massive success. Plankton grew jealous of Mr. Krabs' success and wanted revenge because he felt like he deserved that success too. That became the reason he dedicated his life to stealing the recipe. Plankton tried everything. He built inventions, created strategies, and used every dirty trick he could think of. But we all know he never succeeds. He fails again and again, sometimes for reasons that don't even make sense.
Oh, curse you, cruel fate! Once again, you've left me covered in the sticky goo of my own folly.
We know Plankton is a genius. So how does he keep losing to someone who doesn't even seem that smart? Why does this happen? Maybe it's because he's blinded by revenge. Maybe his desire for power and fear from others has kept him from thinking clearly this whole time. He romanticizes the idea of being a supervillain, admired, feared, and powerful. And because he's physically tiny, to the point where people often don't even notice him, he seems to have developed a deep inferiority complex. That helps explain why he craves power and recognition so badly. Think about it. With all his resources, intelligence, and his wife Karen being a super advanced AI, he should have been able to get a Krabby Patty easily. It's weird when you remember that in the first movie, he stole King Neptune's crown with no problem, a crown guarded by countless guards. Yet stealing a recipe from a restaurant full of idiots seems impossible for him. And if he really has that much genius and technology, he should have been able to build a restaurant way more successful than the Krusty Krab. It doesn't make sense that he keeps losing. Plankton is incredibly determined. Even after failing over and over, he never gives up. He's willing to use illegal and unethical methods just to reach his goal. That kind of obsession makes it hard to believe this is only about opening a successful restaurant. Maybe at first that really was his goal. Maybe he even believed it himself. But after years of failure, jealousy, and revenge, something changed. The process itself awakened his identity as a villain. He started loving the idea of being evil more than achieving his original goal.
Oh my gosh, what kind of cruel person would destroy a delightful friendship? Yes, that's me.
From scenes throughout the show, it's clear that deep down, he doesn't truly care that much about owning a restaurant. He doesn't even care that much about the Krabby Patty formula itself. What he really wants is to be a villain. He wants massive power. He wants everyone to fear him. He enjoys the process of trying to steal the secret formula more than actually getting it. That could be because his small size made him feel looked down on his whole life. It affected him psychologically, pushing him to build a worldview centered around gaining power, making people fear him, and making himself feel big. In the very first episode where he appears, Plankton every time he talks about his evil plan or gets closer to success. He plays dramatic classical music, like a movie villain. Then he does an evil laugh right after. That alone tells us he loves this role. He loves the idea of being a villain. He even says multiple times that he wants to rule the world. He says he wants great power and wants everyone to fear him because people have always looked down on him. He needs recognition. He needs people to see him as someone important, even if it means becoming everyone's enemy. There's a saying that dreams are how the subconscious speaks to us. In the episode where SpongeBob enters everyone's dreams, Plankton dreams of becoming gigantic and destroying Bikini Bottom. That shows us something important. Deep inside, he craves the fear of others. He's insecure about being small, and his mind created a coping mechanism, becoming big through power and intimidation. This theme shows up constantly throughout the series. The clearest example is in the movie.
Bersama kita mencuri formula rahasia itu, menghancurkan Tuan Krabs dan menguasai dunia.
Where he controls everyone in Bikini Bottom and rules over them all. His love for being a villain is unhealthy, and ironically, it pushes him farther away from his real goals. He loves designing plots, building gadgets, and manipulating SpongeBob so much that he forgets the reason he started doing all of it in the first place: to build a successful restaurant. That obsession becomes a weakness in his strategy. Sure, he has better technology and resources, but he relies too much on deception, manipulation, and shortcuts, the classic tools of a villain, instead of simply doing things the right way. Sometimes his obsession with stealing the formula clouds his judgment too. He often fails because he's impatient and wants results immediately. In Plankton, for example, he fails because he rushes to grab a Krabby Patty, causing it to fall into his analyzer machine. Plankton can basically be described as a wannabe villain, someone who desperately wants to be evil but keeps failing at it.
Semua akan bertekuk lutut pada Plankton. Hidup Plankton. Aku menang.
People like that often lack the qualities needed to be an effective villain. They may also lack the practical skills or discipline needed to make their plans succeed. Even though Plankton is brilliant with innovation and technology, he isn't as clever as Mr. Krabs in practical ways. Mr. Krabs always finds a way to beat him without wasting resources because he knows exactly what to do to get what he wants. Mr. Krabs also built a loyal and healthy team, willing to do almost anything to protect the Krusty Krab and its secret formula. That makes him stronger than Plankton, who always works alone or tries to build teams through manipulation instead of trust. And let's not forget, Mr. Krabs deeply understands the restaurant business and customer satisfaction. That gives him a huge advantage over Plankton. Even if he doesn't seem smarter, he knows how to run a business successfully, the kind of skill every entrepreneur needs. In the episode New Leaf, we see that when Plankton stops obsessing over stealing the formula and stops obsessing over being a villain, he actually runs a souvenir shop successfully. Even though it turns out to be part of another scheme, that brief moment proves he really could build something successful if he truly wanted to. If Plankton could let go of his irrational obsessions, stop trying to be a villain, and focus on what he actually wants, he might become a far better businessman than Mr. Krabs. He might even become more successful in the end, because we know his love for being a villain is exactly what keeps him from reaching what he truly wants. And power built on fear is never a strong foundation for long-term success. Every time he gains it, something always gets in the way and tears it down. There's still a lot we can learn from Plankton: his persistence, his determination despite endless failure, and his drive to create new innovations. Those traits can inspire us to think creatively when dealing with problems. In the end, even though Plankton is smart and has plenty of resources, his desire to be a villain destroys the plans he creates himself. That desire may come from the psychological wounds of always feeling small. But still, if he could stop trying to be a villain and focus on building his own restaurant, he would probably find the success he's always wanted instead of failing over and over again. And maybe one day, he'd finally beat Mr. Krabs.